Perry Como recreates the sounds of Cole Porter in Paris, Wednesday at 10, 9 Central Time.
Class is a steak smothered in lamb chops.
Class is always simple.
The dynamite lady.
Culture.
My boss.
My wife.
My car.
It's a hard word to describe, but easy to recognize.
We think Tuborg beer's got class. It's one of the best beers in Europe. And now it's made in America with a taste of the old country, but light like American. And priced like American, too. Tuborg beer. It's got class.
If you have it, it's terrific.
Your house is like a savings account. Its value increases regularly. Unfortunately, that leaves most homeowners house rich but cash poor. But a homeowner's loan from Avco can help. It converts the increased value in your home into cash in your hands. Cash to do whatever you want to do with easy payments over a period of years. At Avco, it's our business to lend money to homeowners. What you do with the money is your business.
When you believe in people, we'll get the round.
Steve McQueen, Ali McGraw, The Getaway, a Sam Peckinpah film, rated PG.
The Getaway, now showing at a selected Winner's Circle theater or drive-in near you. KNBC 4, Los Angeles.
Presentation of NBC News.
Meet the Press is brought to you by Exxon.
When I was a boy, there was but one permanent ambition among my comrades in the village of Hannibal on the Mississippi. That was to be a steamboatman. Pilot was the grandest position of all. So by and by, I ran away. I said I would never come home again till I was a pilot and could come home in glory.
We were on the river during Mark Twain's time, and we're still there, supplying America with fuel. The country's grown a bit since then, and Exxon's grown along with it. But some things haven't changed that much. And even though today's captain, like Exxon's Charlie Womack, is a highly trained product of the 20th century, he still has the same feeling for the river and the same pride in his occupation as the rivermen Mark Twain wrote about.
I love that profession far better than any I have followed since.
Our guests today on Meet the Press are Senator Hugh Scott of Pennsylvania, Republican leader of the Senate, and Representative Gerald R. Ford of Michigan, Republican leader of the House of Representatives. We'll have the first questions now from Robert McCormick of NBC News.
Well, Senator Scott, in view of Dr. Kissinger's return from the Paris negotiations and General Haig's impending trip to Saigon, do you think these current peace hopes are any more for real than the ones we've had in the past?
You've heard them described as useful. You've heard Dr. Kissinger say that he seeks a peace of justice and conciliation. Hanoi has said that progress is noted. And by the way, General Haig is also going to Laos, Cambodia, and Thailand. So I would read some reason for anticipation in that.
I might have construed that as meaning that you are optimistic about getting a settlement this time.
I am certainly, as always, hopeful. We are doing, our side is doing the best it can, notwithstanding a disagreement of a minority of Americans that we're doing the right thing. I think we are.
Congressman Ford, you're undoubtedly more aware than I am of the discontent in Congress among Republicans as well as Democrats, some of them at least. What will happen in Congress if we do not get a peace settlement this time? Will the President have any control left over Congress at all?
Mr. McCormick, I would prefer to look at the situation from the optimistic point of view that there will be some meaningful results. I think it would be unwise in this very critical, crucial stage to speculate on what might come if things didn't turn out well. I think we ought to be hopeful. We ought to look at it optimistically and not make plans for something that might be unfortunate.
Well, by the same token, though, in your position as Republican leader in the House, don't you have to be braced for another Turkey?
Well, we'll meet that problem if and when it occurs. I'm hopeful it won't. I think there will be time to adjust to meet the problem if it does arise.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll be back to introduce our other panel members and continue the questions in just a minute. But first, this message.
If you're buying a new 1973 car, you're in luck. 73s have tougher bumpers. So Allstate's giving every 1973 car sold in this country a 10%, 15%, or 20% discount on collision insurance. The better the bumper, the better the discount. We promised to give you a break on your auto insurance when bumpers got tougher. Now we're keeping that promise. So if you're planning on a 1973 car, see Allstate about your 1973 bumper discount. 10, 15, or 20% off collision insurance. And when you get there, ask your Allstate agent about all our other discounts on auto insurance. Allstate. We're very easy to find.
Now back to Meet the Press, an unrehearsed press conference. Here's our moderator, Lawrence Spivak.
We're ready now to resume our interview on Meet the Press. Our guests are the Republican leaders of the Senate and the House of Representatives, Senator Hugh Scott and Representative Gerald R. Ford. You've just met Robert McCormick of NBC News. The other questioners on our panel today are Joseph Kraft of Publishers Newspaper Syndicate, Neil McNeil of Time, and Jack W. Germond of the Gannett newspapers. We'll continue the questions now with Mr. Kraft.
Senator Scott, I guess apart from Vietnam, the thing that has been puzzling Washington most recently has been the behavior of the president. You've known him for a very, very long time. Do you sense that there is something different, that the so-called withdrawal and isolation and disposition to make decisions without consultation, that marks a new attitude, that there'll be a different mood of presidential leadership in the second term?
No, I think the president has been freed of political considerations. I think it will be important to him as to how his name is written in history. With specific answer, however, on foreign policy, there is an agreement between Hanoi and the United States that there will be no discussion of negotiations, and therefore I think that would explain why the president has not spoken to the American people at this time. He had said in a meeting with the joint leadership of Congress earlier that he will report at a time when he seasonably can. I think if he were to report by way of a press conference on domestic affairs, it would open up the whole question of negotiations that might imperil the agreement between the two sides. I would expect him to have something to say shortly after the peace talks are concluded.
How about the matter of consultation with the Congress? Are you satisfied in that score?
Well, the Congress is not more than organized. Nothing else has happened. He will send messages up, the State of the Union. He will issue his inaugural address, of course. I have no doubt he will be in immediate touch with the bipartisan leadership of Congress, perhaps next week. And I think he will keep close contact. We in Congress always like the contact to be closer than it is, no matter who the president is.
You don't think it would have been appropriate for him, in taking a step so large as the bombing of North Vietnam, of the resumption of the bombing, to be in touch with the congressional leadership?
I think that's a judgmental matter for the president to take. I would like for him to have consulted the Congress. There was some consultation as this went on. Both Mr. Ford and I have been at the White House and have had discussions. But the president alone can make that decision, and he has made it.
Mr. McNeil.
Congressman Ford, the president has won what he obviously regards as a mandate, and so have the Democrats in Congress. And they're planning, obviously, to write their own legislative program. What do you see here? A stalemate? Deadlock between the president and Congress?
I don't see a stalemate or a deadlock at all, Mr. McNeil. As a matter of fact, I think the Congress is getting started in 1973 much the way it did in 1969 and 1965. I believe that the Congress will come up with some programs of its own. The Democratic leadership has indicated they will. But I also know that the President is going to be sending down a very substantial domestic program in the very early weeks of this Congress, so that you will have in the legislative mill at the very outset a program from the White House and whatever the Democratic leadership also puts into that mill. That's not much different than it's been in the past.
The President would welcome cooperation from the Congress. He'd like them to really do something responsible to keep this budget within the $250 billion.
One of the principal thrusts, as I understand it, from the Democratic leaders is that they're going to reenact the bills that the President vetoed last year. What is the President going to do here? Veto them again? Have you talked to him about this?
I think the White House will take pretty much the same attitude that it took before. When the President, at the end of the session or after Congress adjourned, he vetoed, as I recall, 11 bills, all on the basic principle that on a total basis, they would have added significantly to the budget crisis, the fiscal difficulties that the country was in. Now, if these individual bills come down one by one, I believe the President will have to look at the package as a whole, even though they come down on different days and the time for veto might be a different day. He has to look at the end result, and that end result in October, November would be no worse than it is today. So I think he'll have to exercise the same kind of strong fiscal restraint that he did before if we're going to avoid any tax increase, if we're going to avoid the need and necessity for an increase in the debt limitation, if we're going to avoid the problems of added inflation.
Well, what about these vetoes? I gather from what you're saying there will be some, probably. Can you sustain them in the Congress? Can you get that 1/3 plus 1?
I think we can.
Mr. Jamon.
Senator Scott, I'd like to go back, if I could, to Mr. Kraft's questions about Vietnam. You said that there were consultations at the White House that involved you and Mr. Ford. Can you tell us specifically, did the President tell you what went wrong in the negotiations? And did he tell you why he was resuming the bombing?
The President has never made any comment to me as to anything having gone wrong or not having gone wrong in the negotiations.
Well, Mr. Kissinger said that peace was at hand October 26th. It obviously wasn't.
He and Mr. Kissinger and others have made it clear that the bombing is a continuation of the May the 8th statement of the President. It was not a new decision arrived at in December. It was clear in what the President had said in May that he would use such means as he felt proper, the negotiating track